Okay, here we are. It's noon Eastern on a Thursday. Imagine that. Here we are with another episode of Untangled. Hi, everybody in LinkedIn land. It's Jen Frazier, your host, founder CEO of Firefly Partners. This is an episode of Untangled, which is conversations on digital and AI for social good. Every week, I like to bring on a guest and talk about the thorny issues that are sort of getting in the way of nonprofits and social good enterprises and businesses of all sizes trying to do good in the world. And right now, AI is kind of the thing. So we're talking about it every week from a little bit of a different angle and getting different perspectives on what do we do with this big new set of tools. I don't know, AI is such a hard thing to pin down. But this week, I'm joined by Jen McFarland, founder of Merit Digital. Jen, thanks so much for joining us. We've got the Jens here, the Power Jens.
Yeah, happy, yeah, to Jen to the second power. There you go.
I met Jen in our sort of women owned B Corp spaces. So we're both B Corps, which is great. Trying to also just do a little bit more good for the planet while we're out here just trying to make sense of all the technology and all the things for other good social minded businesses. So tell us a little about you and your background and how you got to doing what you're doing at Merit.
Yeah, sure. First, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat about this. Always excited to talk about it. I started working at NC State many years ago in the central help desk and then worked for central IT for the organization. And I think I got at least some of my sort of community and like broader oriented supporting the broader community kind of thing from higher education, which often tries to support you know, the surrounding community more and helping more of the projects, more education for people. And so when the time came for me to leave the university after almost 20 years, I went to a fully remote digital agency that was an outstanding agency, but did not have the sort of priorities of, let's call it compassionate capitalism. They supported a lot of the organizations and big companies that I was not comfortable with, institutions that I didn't really want to work with as much. And so after about a year, also because my kids were about to go into kindergarten, I went ahead and decided to start Merit Digital. When I started Merit Digital, I was not at all aware of B Corps or what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
However, I also do some writing for some technology topics in my area. I'm in North Carolina in the Triangle, and one of the events that I was covering was the BLD Southeast event back in 2023, I think. And I went to the event and I was like, these are my people. Like I know what they're going for here, and I'm down with it. And they're asking questions like that I want to ask specifically for me around technology and how can we be more environmentally and ethically conscious about the technology that we're choosing. Um, and so that was kind of, like a no-brainer that I needed to walk in that direction. And so I became a B Corp 20 fall of 2024, and haven't looked back. Our work is primarily in supporting small businesses and nonprofits with their technology needs. We're kind of a fractional technology support for groups that don't have as much infrastructure in that area. But our focus is also in doing that technology, choosing technology choices, implementing it in ways that are hopefully, again, as environmentally and ethically conscious as possible.
Awesome. That's so great. I mean, I feel you all day. I've been sort of a rabble rouser since day one. I don't know. Or at least in my early life, I figured out like which side I was going to fall on, even though it's funny, both sides of my family are both very conservative, a lot of MAGA folks and stuff like that. And so I don't know. We were the kind of random part of the family that moved to Oregon. And so I think we just got, I kind of got raised in a very different environment, not in downstate Illinois. And that might have had something to do with it, or Tennessee or random other places. But kind
Mhm.
of knew early on that I was going to be kind of in the progressive left side of the house. So I love though like hearing like when you're like, oh, these things all make sense to me, and I
Yeah.
might not have named it super specifically, but like I love when you kind of folks come to those realizations and those kind of moments. So starting it, doing all this technology work, same thing I've been doing the same type of work, like just thinking about technology adoption in nonprofits, really most specifically, and definitely doing more in other businesses now. And AI obviously has come thundering in the last few years. And AI obviously is again, like I said in the intro, it's a little bit of this weird kind of all-inclusive term that's sort of nonsensical because we we really are using AI right now, these two letters, to really kind of, for most people, I think they think about it and they think about like it's a generative AI platform. It's a little like LLM, and it's there's the chatbots and the modules, but that's like there's a slice of what AI really is. And when we talk about it, I think there's always a good idea to be like, what are we talking about?
I
Because
agree. It's one of the problems I think with AI, particularly with AI education, is that the vocabulary around it is, like you say, extremely nebulous. Like we don't
yes,
have every company is doing their own version of, like, for example, a gem or a project, right? The smaller, more focused
yes,
models. And people are using a lot of terms interchangeably, and they don't necessarily mean the same thing to someone who's using a different particular model. So it can be really challenging
yeah.
to teach on that topic.
Yeah, I feel like we start with a glossary of terms a lot of times
Yeah.
about just like,
Yeah,
okay,
I
let's
do
get on
too.
the same page and let's get some commonality and understanding of language first off, because it is what is the apples and apples ish kind of thing across these different tools. And again, even what does AI really mean and those kinds of things. But when you kind of go, great, even within those spaces, what we want to talk about today specifically is a topic that comes up a lot in sort of these circles we run in social impact, social good spaces about sustainability, in the world of using these generative AI tools. We've all heard the stories, the data centers, the mass amounts of water, the environmental impacts that are happening because of a lot of the reasons, which I'd love for you to sort of dive into about sort of how we got here. I know you've done a lot more digging and research about, like, again, like this is a moment where people, I think there's just a lot of hype, or there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of myths and things, and like people are getting hyperbolic about a lot of things, but also just like maybe cutting through some of that and say, tell us about what you've learned and some of your research about, like, what's the real story. Give us some real numbers that aren't just like these kind of fantastical, every chat is like 17 million gallons of water, etc. Like what is it really? Boil it down.
Yeah. I mean, because to some extent, if somebody is telling you that, they're lying because we just don't know.
Right. Right.
Companies are not putting this information out there. We have basically one or two companies that have been explicit in measuring what the sort of costs are in terms of water and energy usage for, again, what we would call, what they have defined as a typical prompt. So that's another kind of area
Right.
of question, is what is the typical prompt,
Not
right?
all
Like,
prompts are equal.
I mean, yeah, you're looking all over the place there. I would encourage people to take a look at that. So Mistral and Google, most notably Google, have both done some research into this and shared. I'm sorry, can you hear my dog?
A little bit. It's fine. It's
I
fine.
can't.
We're
Okay,
good.
all right. Have both done research into this, and I encourage you to read whatever information they have, just for context of how they're measuring it, understanding the pieces that are going into it, because it's more than just like you're typing some things in, right? Like, so they're going through the whole cycle of how this is being measured. So when you are taking measurements on this, you also should be looking at what is the cost, the embedded cost of the servers themselves, how they were built, what is the cost of the
Yeah.
training of the model, right? What is the cost of inference, which is your actual prompt? And then, you should also be looking at what is the cost of, down the line, getting rid of these materials, in addition to all the other pieces that are in the way.
There's that.
Um, but this is something that has been looked at in some of those articles, and so it's insightful to kind of see where they're going, from, they call it cradle to grave, of that
Okay.
cost. Um, Now, people have said, at least in terms of Google's documentation, which has gotten plenty of attention, that they're underestimating, and that may
Yeah.
be the case. But at the same time, they've done the work, and I'm not seeing a lot of other companies doing that work, or even being willing to. There's a lot of hiding behind, like, quote unquote proprietary statements and things like that. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of in a place of giving a little bit of credit to anyone who is being transparent at all about
Right.
what we're doing. Yeah. So I do tend to like give a little bit more credit to Google, who's not only doing that, but also has always been more aggressive in their renewable energy for their data centers, for reaching out and supporting other startup businesses that are looking for alternative forms of energy. So there's some benefits there that we certainly don't see from like maybe an Amazon or some other companies.
Yeah.
Um, but regardless, like over time, we are seeing that the number of data centers that are being required. I mean, the bottleneck for AI at this point is quite clearly it's not even chips, it's energy, right? It's the amount of energy that's going to be required to run all these prompts. That's our biggest problem. And at this point, we're just trying to figure out where that energy is going to come from. And while people are looking for alternative forms of energy or some new clean energy, most of the time the goal is to get these data centers up as quickly as possible. And let's just say the data centers are certainly being built faster than renewable energy is being built. And so for now, most of that energy is coming from, unfortunately, energy forms that we were trying to take offline, like coal and natural gas and
I
utility
know.
lines.
It's like the
And of course,
fastest, quickest, dirtiest. Okay. Deal with the dog. The dog.
it's bunny
Like,
season outside.
like, can you just go run laps outside? That'd be amazing. I mean, I think these are the like interesting questions that we're running up against. So they come online, they go public with it. I know there's been obviously lots of there was a lot of building behind the scenes, obviously, before either of them. I know that OpenAI and Anthropic in particular, and I know Google, they were all sort of like trying to race to the offering essentially of like getting it out and getting people using it, and then obviously it's taken off in such a crazy way that we aren't able, or it's hard to keep up, I guess, with sort of the public demand. Is there an actual, this is something I don't actually know the answer to and I haven't really seen it, there's not, is there a space where we're like they literally can't keep up with the demand? Like would the data centers just be like, we can't process 24/7, we're only going to be able to do this for a certain number of hours of the day because we literally don't have the energy? Or like what are the real, like what are the consequences, or what are things that they're just like, whatever, we're just going to keep funneling energy from whatever we have to do to keep these things running and chugging along at the speeds that they're chugging? I mean, what is there, there's no like cliff we're going to run off of because of the energy, or is that possible?
I don't think it's an energy cliff that you're going to hit because, I mean, at some point, the you will see energy stop being available, but it may not be, it's not going to be abundantly clear that it's not available because of the specific data centers and things. What we are seeing still at this point is where AI companies, for example, I know Claude put out a new tier, and there's no way I'm going to have the details on this because this changes so frequently, but they put out a new tier that was advertising for like basically an unlimited amount of access, and then it was very quickly throttled for the people who
Ah,
signed up because they can't keep up with capacity.
gotcha.
And there are a lot, unfortunately, there's a real trend right now of people, if you've heard the term token maxing, people who are being encouraged, even by their companies, to use AI tools. In some cases, the benchmarks are like you should be using as much AI as the cost of the salary that we're paying you for today. Yeah, or above. There are boards, token maxing boards within companies to see who
Yeah.
used the most tokens in a day. It's pretty nauseating, quite frankly. Like it's a genuine effort to use. I mean, they're using it for a purpose, arguably, but to use as
They're
much
also like,
energy as possible, right? In the goal of quite frankly, I mean, this seems, at least on its face, like the worst kind of incentivization, right? Of like you're just incentivizing your team to spend lots of money on, but there's no clear definition of like what you're going to get out of it. So, they're going to use AI arguably in the least effective way possible. So it's really frustrating, kind of the place where we are right now. I'm hoping that it's a phase, because we certainly have this kind of point in, I think, our nation generally where some of these things are, energy and effectiveness are not a priority, and there is more focus on extreme behavior than extreme, right? So I'm
Agreed.
hoping that this is more of a phase.
One might make an argument for that. Yes, that yeah. Hopefully, we can kind of like level out and be like, okay, everybody settle down. Like, let's
Yes,
start using it more.
but
I
it's
mean, the big
right
thing
now
is,
it's definitely rough.
yeah, if people were really just using it strategically and not just be like, hey, make a funny photo of me, with the president doing funny
Yeah,
things or whatever. It's like
yeah,
I think that like hopefully some of this novelty period will sort of like wear off or whatever, and everybody will kind of come back and go, okay, we've done all the stupid things that people will do when new tools become available, and then we kind of go, okay, what's actually the right and smart and strategic ways to use these tools. There will always be dingbats who will always be like creating silly videos of people or whatever and stuff like that, and it's gonna do its impact. But the thing that I wanted to spend some time on, again, hopefully it levels out and hopefully we kind of get more strategic, is the how can we as folks who care, obviously a lot of us spent a lot of time working on environmental issues for years, and that sort of comes along and is like great and also horrific at the same time. It's like the
yeah.
counter
I don't
thing
know
that we
how you could have anticipated a technology that is both environmentally and ethically questionable, and then just, basically jumped in the laps of every single person. It's like a worst case scenario. And yet it's also the unquestionable breakthrough,
yeah.
of the last 25 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like this is going to radically change pretty
Yep.
much everything that we do in ways that I think obviously we don't really even know
Yep.
right now. We're at the beginning of that J curve of like, wow, we don't even know.
Yep.
It's impossible to predict the ways it's going to impact society at large and what we do on the planet. In the meantime, those of us who care and those of us who are trying to make smarter decisions, we hear about this. I've heard, again, all the horror stories. It doesn't really like at the end of the day, like the actual numbers. Again, since we don't really know a lot of it, it's sort of like almost a little bit. Yes, let's not get too hung up on the specifics. We know that it's bad. Okay,
Hmm.
so what can we do, or what are ways do I think in a talk you gave recently? I was like, how can we choose a more sustainable model, or like what are
Right.
our options? Like what do you tell people right now? Or how are you counseling folks when they're like, some people are like, I can't do it. Just because of these constraints, I opt out. Environmental orgs, a lot of are like, there's a lot of just like, we need to not be a part of the problem and opting out. And so I'm like, well, that's not a good choice
Yeah.
because I feel like, again, there's like also this amazing breakthrough technology, learn how to use it well. How do you advise people, or what does it mean to sort of choose a sustainable model that works for you
Hmm.
as an organization who's these kinds of values?
Yeah, that's the key there is choosing the tool that works for you, because I don't think that anyone should go into a conversation about AI and start by shutting it down. It is, again, like a technology of our generation. And just because a bunch of tech CEOs have decided to prioritize innovation over, the impact to our environment, that does not mean that we should not take advantage of it. By removing ourselves from using it, we remove ourselves from the conversation. There's like we're missing a lot of value by doing that. And I don't think it serves us for, let's say, a particular group of people to have all the expertise in using these tools.
Right.
So, but you have to use it in a way that works for you. So, you know, kind of the keys that we talk about are using the information that you do have available to identify the tools that are right for you.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of that is still kind of doing research for yourself, because your benchmark, is maybe a little different from someone else's. There are tools out there, and I'll provide links to some websites that have some resources that people can look at. But there are a couple tools that will sort of benchmark sites or AI tools. And again, mostly they're looking at open source tools, because that's all
Mm-hmm.
that we are really able to get information on.
Yeah.
But a lot of times those open source tools are versions provided by maybe Google or Meta or some of the companies that are hosting the bigger name tools, the large proprietary tools. So we can start to look at some of that data, see the data that's behind that. And we can look at that and see. which of these tools are coming out as most efficient, which ones have the highest number of or the highest rate of hallucinations, which ones are more likely to respond negatively and give unsafe information or dangerous feedback or respond in ways that are creepy and dangerous. There are models out there uh, that are doing that, and there are tools that are kind of measuring that, which ones are the most dangerous or the most energy efficient. So you can start to compare that a little bit based on, again, is like hallucination the biggest deal for you? Is energy the biggest deal for you? What are the things that are important for you?
Okay.
And then one of the things that you can do really that's simple is, I mean, if you're thinking about this, hopefully this isn't even something that needs to be said, but just like using it less. Like if you're not token maxing, then just imagine you're like ahead of 50% of the population, right?
Right.
So just, when you need to use AI to generate an image or help you review some content, don't do it 15 iterations of that image, right? Think about exactly what you need. Try to research or understand the best way to prompt for exactly what you need. Some of that will come with time. Don't beat yourself up if you try something and it doesn't work. Like the next time you do it, it will be better. But then make notes on what you did so that you can do it better next time, or share
Yeah.
some of that prompting or some of those ideas within your team. If you're trying to make graphics that are branded for your company, like look at doing a specific smaller tailored model for that,
Yeah.
or having specific instructions that describe that for the tool. So there's definitely some things that you can do ahead of time to prepare your prompts to be as effective as possible. And then there's also quite a few tools out there that will measure at this point. We're getting more and more of these tools all the time. This is somewhat a newer area.
Hmm.
And again, like it's tricky to say how accurate these are, but there are tools that are starting to measure what the impact of the prompts that you're doing are. And most of these are focused on the big names. So like they're working with, Google with Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, and they're measuring the impact. And then there are also some tools I'm going to shout out. Ecolytics has an offset tool that is a browser extension, and it will measure your usage and also give you the chance to offset that usage. So you can put some money towards those impacts. Uh,
Right.
so so there are options for using it in ways that hopefully will make you hit sort of that level of concern that you have.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk of like, yeah, carbon offset or other things that, like, yeah, when people are like, well, what can I do? Again, I love all those things you just said. We'll kind of highlight a lot of that. The iterations, sort of other places, or again, like saving options, or yeah, like you can do a lot in like a Canva or something before you're,
Sure.
trying to push it into your, Gen AI tool to do some other sort of final tweaking on or something like that. There's a lot of tools that aren't straining the data centers, I guess I would say. So definitely thinking about ways to sort of iterate or iterate other places a little bit. I think that's a nice way to put it. Or yeah, take your version and take it out and then sort of do some other tweaking
For yourself, right?
in other places. Or again, I mean, prompt libraries I think right now are just such a huge need all the way across the board because it's like such a time saver. And really at this
Mhm.
point, it's kind of like time saving in your tool is always a best thing, and it helps just take everybody a little bit further along so they don't have to do a lot of the early stuff. But I think a lot of this learning and training and doing a lot of research and finding ways to sort of jump in and use it a little more strategically is like a
Yeah,
great option too.
prompt libraries, or again, creating like the smaller, I'm not going to call it, it's not a, it's like a smaller model or a smaller specifically trained, again, like it's a gem in Google, it's a project in
Yes.
Claude, yeah, right? Like those tools for your team that do something specific. So maybe you have one that is doing like a final review of any of your blog posts to make sure that it has the brand elements and that it's, editorially appropriate for your organization, and just checking for grammar, right? Like just
Right.
some very specific tailored tools that are going to work for your organization. It is as effective or more effective than even prompt sharing, because those you can really tailor to what you need. Anybody in the organization can do it. You're not necessarily digging around for a specific prompt. And
Right.
by using this smaller, more constrained set of requirements that's more efficient, that's more energy efficient, and it's more likely to be successful. It's more likely to avoid hallucinations. It's like a win-win-win.
Yeah, I love all of that. Really good things to think about. I think there's just a lot of different ethical and like these kind of sustainable questions are I think forcing different kinds of conversations, which I love. Like you're not just everyone open it up and you live in it
Yeah.
all day and you prompt and you use it literally. I think that was sort of the start there for a while where everyone was like, you just have it open and you're just using it all day and you're asking it everything and you're blah 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 and you're like, okay, same like we said, like there's this big, jump in and then maybe kind of come back down and sort of figure out the ways to use it
Mhm.
most strategically. And yeah, in those like when do you really need to use it? I mean, that's I
Yeah.
think like it's like jump in, swim around, and everyone's like, oh, let's figure this all out. And then you kind of go, okay, I don't need to literally have it spend every minute of every day
Right.
doing every little bit for me. But I do like the idea of training it to do certain things. The idea of like the move from folks getting some basics in and then thinking about these agentic workflows potentially that can also just help, then it runs a thing very efficiently and it's like great and it gives you and it's saving your organization tons of time on a certain couple of few tasks or whatever and you're like okay great we've gotten through this, we've figured that out and we've made some gains. I think those are really good and they're beneficial for obviously an organization or a company, but also it doesn't require everybody to sort of stabbing around continually. You've like came up with some workflows, you've got your little custom workflows or things like that can be really
It's
helpful. But it takes a
it's
little bit of time to get those figured out. But then you're like, great.
but it is hard to compare. This is like a workflow shift and a values shift, right? Of like, what is the cost of running an AI process that's maybe going through a website and pulling out specific fields and putting them into a spreadsheet for me, right? Like that is, yes, you're using AI, but then like what is the time that it would take you? So the value of your time, but also the value of the energy of having these tabs open and running back and forth between both of them and copying and pasting and then cleaning it up and then searching for whatever equation or thing that you needed to parse all the stuff in this. There's definitely offsets there. Like I'm not going to do the math on those two things, but logically speaking, that at some point these are evening out pretty closely.
For sure. So in our last couple of minutes, like I know you're going to give a link to a place with some resources. There any tools? I've got a favorite. You've got a favorite. What are you using? Are you obviously and also I was like we were talking earlier and I was like I'm okay to just like if you care about these things, you probably shouldn't be using the big tools. They're not thinking about this. You said Google's a little bit more environmentally thoughtful and conscious than maybe your Anthropic or certainly your OpenAI. Do you have other tools you'd love to shout out that maybe other folks just aren't hearing about and don't know about?
Um, Again, probably people know about most of it. I do use Google. I use Google for a couple of reasons. One is because I'm a Google Workspace user, and so some of that is included in what I'm using. And again, I work mostly with small businesses and nonprofits, so they're working on a thin margin anyway. And you should be paying for your AI tool. Like, let's be clear
Yes.
about that. And if you're doing that, then you should use the tools that you have available to you.
Yeah.
And I do think that the groups of tools available. I know that Claude is getting a lot of attention right now, and I'm delighted that Claude is getting a boost over OpenAI. But Claude is not environmentally, first of all, they are one of the least transparent companies
Yes.
about what the impact is.
Yes.
And they're also not green hosted. Like I have
Oh,
my own concerns about Claude.
very
So
disappointing.
I know, I know. I feel bad for that. I mean, it's not OpenAI, so okay. So yes, hence I'm landing on Google. But I do use Perplexity, and Perplexity is a tool that is a sort of search focused AI. I like that it gives you some choices in terms of you can choose which models you want to use. So for example, they have a sanitized version of DeepSeek, which is a Chinese model, but that was a very efficiently built model. And so some giving you a little bit more flexibility, both in terms of which model you're using, and then also like I can choose to say I want short, and you can do this with pretty much any model. You should be able to go in and say I don't want long responses. I want you to keep this as tight as possible. Perplexity specifically has a, do you want like a short, medium, or longer response? And I'm like, give me short, give it short. Yeah. Um,
Sure.
so they have some things that are good. They also have an extension, so when I need to, I can just pop open this little pop-up window and ask it a
Mhm.
question and get a quick answer and not have to go and render a whole Google search or a whole Perplexity and just do things quickly. So the Perplexity extension is a good one. I'm not paying for Green PT at this point, but that's certainly
Okay.
one that I recommend for people to look at, especially if
Okay.
they're extremely concerned about this. Some of those comparisons really come down to how were the models trained, and I think Green
Yeah.
PT is one that has better standing than any of the other big models. But what you get from the big models is also it's a tougher comparison that some of those bigger models just work more effectively depending on the situation that you need them for. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Okay.
it's always a game of like comparisons and where
I
is your
know.
tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah. So we work a lot with the folks at Change Agent, and we love them because they're again home. They're built within the social impact space, and
Mhm.
account for the biases, try and do a lot of carbon offsets, like all those things too. I've just learned about Latimer AI. Like I think it's just really my main message here for folks is to be like go beyond the big
Yeah.
four, whatever, big
Yeah.
four, five, and like really start digging in right now and be like, okay, you see what's possible. Maybe you played around. Now really think about your values as an organization or a company, and then start to look at there are other tools that are either already built, have been built, are out there. You don't hear about them. They don't have the big budgets. They're not funded by
Mistral,
Silicon
yeah.
Valley. So,
Mistral
right.
is one that I would recommend in that they're close to bigger. They are certainly like they're in a medium space.
Yeah.
They are EU based, so they are a lot more, sort of they're constrained by more than, the US based companies are. So they're following the rules a little more closely. They're open source, so they're really working to be upfront and share
Yeah.
solutions. So that's another one and you can download copies of Mistral for yourself because it's open source. So if you needed to do something like, more higher end, that's a little bit more option, has more options. So that's another one.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all these in the blog that I'll write up, and then we'll link off to your larger resource. I know you have a ton of resource documents, which is super helpful, and you've been doing.
Trying to add to it all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
next
living,
time has
breathing
more.
document, obviously. So keep
Yeah.
folks out there, keep that link, and then kind of come back to it. We're trying to like just yeah. There's no like one super source, but like find folks who are doing the work like Jen, and then like come back to it and say, great, we've been trying to compile a resources document ourselves, and mostly I just find myself pointing to other people's
Yeah.
documents because I'm like, I don't need to recreate this document. So
Right.
I'm all about the sharing, and they like, hey,
And
you've already
it's
figured a bunch of this stuff out
it's shifting sands. It changes so much.
every
Anytime you
day.
can
I know.
outsource some of that knowledge to an expert, I'm going to do that.
Exactly. So I try and find my trusted people. I say,
Yeah.
you're on my page, you're my people, you've been doing some of this stuff. And so I would love
Hmm.
to shout out and point out some of the stuff that you've already got out there for folks. But really, the big takeaways none of it is 100% sustainable, like and ethically beautiful and environmentally perfect or anything, but it is where we are. So I think it's just making smart choices within the space we find ourselves and sort of continually keep curious open mindset too and like keep looking because the new tools are being developed a lot while we speak and other people are these are big issues for a lot of folks in this space, so look for the tools that are being built. I think if we could link even to that slide deck about looking about how the how transparent the companies are, how they're hosted, what are they doing for their offsets, what are they thinking about, how are they accounting for biases, like all these different things to be thinking about. But in the space of sustainability specifically, you've given us lots of things to think about. So I appreciate your insights and I really appreciate your time for coming on the show and
Absolutely.
talking.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Really great. So again, it's Merit Digital, and we'll put all the links in if people need to find you, Jen. And easy to find. We're all easy to find out there on the interwebs. Next week, I will be joined by Leah Lundberg from Engine 9, and she's actually going to talk about she rebuilt their whole site using Replit, and it mostly just like blew
Mhm.
my mind about how talk about like it's intensive, resource intensive, but the time saving was like the bonkersville to me, and just like
Mhm.
this idea kind of like helping democratize access and abilities and things like that for folks. So She's going to talk through about the process she went through to sort of rebuild their company's website in a couple. I mean, say she like maybe all told it was like a week, which is like just crazy talk to me. So we're talk about that next week, noon Eastern, another episode of Untangled. Yes.
I'm gonna just say I've used Replit as well, and I used it to build an extension that checks whether a website is green hosted or not.
Hey,
And I actually have a version that's about to come out that will, if you, there's going to link to more information about the water carbon
love it.
impact of the hosting area too. So yes, being
Ooh,
able, using tools like that to find that kind of information and connect to those APIs is a great opportunity. Yeah.
great opportunity. I love that.
Yeah.
I can't. Okay, well, we'll put that in and we'll come back. We'll link to it. We'll make sure we get that in folks' hands as well. So awesome. All right, we're over time. So thanks so much, Jen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
everybody out there in LinkedIn land. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll see you next week on